Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are tackling a massive but kind of unspoken source of existential friction in our lives. We're going to look at a fascinating breakdown of exactly how we form our goals, why we hold on to them so incredibly tightly, and most importantly, how to actually test them before handing them an entire decade of your life. So pull up a chair, get comfortable, because we're about to look really closely at the blueprint of your ambitions.
Right off the bat, I want you to ask yourself, are you grinding toward a life you've never actually lived? Look, so many of us are just working relentlessly, right? Burning the midnight oil, grinding day in and day out toward this highly specific future. But what if that future is something you aren't even totally sure you want? Think about it. What if you're building this highly detailed, incredibly expensive life that you have quite literally never taken for a test drive?
The author of our source material paints an absolutely vivid picture of having this exact realization. Just picture this for a second. It's 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. The room is dead quiet. There's just that cool blue glare of a laptop screen casting shadows across a desk. And outside the window, an entire quiet night. It's just passing by, completely unattended.
Inside that room, what's actually happening on the screen? Well, there are 3 tabs open. One's a real estate listing for a fancy high-rise city apartment. Another is a speculative financial model trying to crunch the massive revenue needed to justify a flashy London zip code. And the third is a pitch deck for a big business expansion. The author realized they were doing the arithmetic on a life they had never, not even once, actually sampled.
They were entirely in their head, completely detached from the present moment, basically rehearsing a version of themselves for an audience that didn't even exist. You see, they'd spent years working in a completely unglamorous used commercial laundry business, just constantly telling themselves it was only temporary. They were treating their actual daily existence as this embarrassing footnote, like a temporary purgatory they just had to endure until they reached that loud, impressive skyline office they felt they were owed. But the crazy part? They had never actually checked if they even liked that loud life.
Section 1. The Inherited Dream Trap.
You see, for most of us, ambition doesn't slowly grow from our own tested real-world experiences. Now, it arrives early and it arrives completely finished. Long before you have the actual wisdom to know what makes you happy, you absorb this fully rendered blueprint of success. The algorithm feeds it to you. Shows like Mad Men or Suits romanticize it. Your peers echo it right back to you. So by the time you reach adulthood, this dream feels so deeply installed that you don't even recognize it as foreign. You defend it fiercely, just as if it were your own.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how economists look at this. They rely on a fascinating distinction. On one side, we have stated preference. This is what you say you want. It's the aspirations you boldly declare at dinner parties, write in your journals, and defend in arguments. On the other side is revealed preference. This is what your actual unprompted choices show you want when absolutely nobody is watching. And here's the thing. Most people's 5-year plans live entirely on the stated side. They've never lived a real, unvarnished month of that life to see if they'd actually choose to buy a second month.
Because that wanting stays entirely theoretical, it becomes totally immune to reality. It just sits in your skull, acting like a phantom, whispering that you're missing out. The Roman philosopher Seneca hit the nail on the head when he said, "It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the man who is always after more." The real trap isn't just wanting things. The real trap is burning your finite, irreplaceable energy on things society tells you are valuable, but that you don't even actually like.
Section 2. Why you can't think your way out.
So you might be wondering, why can't I just sit down, journal about this, and figure out what I really want? Well, you can read every Stoic philosopher who ever warned against luxury, but that unverified desire is still going to persist. The philosopher Epicurus split human desires into 2 buckets. Natural desires. These are your finite, easily satisfied needs. Shelter, warm food, meaningful work. And then there are empty desires, manufactured wants, like fame or massive bottomless wealth. Empty desires have no baseline. It's a vessel with no bottom. But here is the major operational problem. From the inside, an empty desire feels identical to a natural one. It carries the exact same emotional urgency. You literally cannot separate them through pure introspection.
The only way to dismantle an empty desire is through actual physical sampling. An untested desire never dies quietly, guys. It has to be taken out and driven. The author actually eventually moved to London to chase that high-status metropolitan dream they'd romanticized for a decade. And you know what happened? Within a few months, the data came in. They absolutely hated it. The sensory overload didn't bring fulfillment, it just brought mental fragmentation. But that sample was priceless. It transformed an abstract fantasy into concrete, undeniable data.
Section 3. Reclaiming the Quiet Life. Once you test those loud dreams and realize they aren't yours, you're left with the quiet life. Now, the standard objection here is that this is some sort of compromise, right? Like a polite consolation prize for people who just couldn't cut it in the high-stakes arena. But that perspective is entirely backwards. Just look at the structural differences. The loud life is inherently fragile and enormously expensive to maintain. It needs a continuous stream of external validation. The audience has to stay attentive, the title has to hold, cut off the validation, and the whole system wobbles because the returns were rented from the crowd. Conversely, a quiet life built on low overhead and deep autonomy is a position of supreme leverage. It's resilient, it's way harder to knock over. It gives you immense optionality when things inevitably break.
Now, a quick aside, a necessary admission here. Intent matters immensely. A quiet life can totally be abused if it's just default quiet, where you're hiding from the world out of fear or just avoiding friction. But chosen quiet is an entirely different beast. It means actively declining unnecessary noise to reserve your energy for what actually matters. When chosen, quiet stops meaning small. It means undistracted. And let's be real, in today's economy, which runs entirely on continuous interruption, being undistracted is the ultimate competitive advantage.
Section 4, the 90-day sampling protocol. So the crucial point is, how do we actually stop committing a decade to untested ambitions?
Well, we need an empirical system. This right here is a highly practical 4-step framework to cheaply and deliberately test an ambition before you hand it your life. We are going to audit, define the dose, instrument the experience, and finally execute the closing script.
Okay, so in step 1, you audit your big life ambitions. Is it a stated dream you just talk about, or a revealed one you're already acting on? Find your loudest stated dream. That's your test subject. Step 2 is the minimum viable dose. The dose has to be real, meaning you make actual sales. Don't just read a book about it. It must be reversible, so moonlight. Don't go quitting your day job just yet. And crucially, it has to last exactly 90 days to get past that initial spike of novelty.
Then we move to step 3, instrument the experience. Every single evening during those 90 days, you don't sit down and write some long emotional journal entry. Nope. You record a single metric based on one specific question. If I were offered the exact daily reality of this past week for the next 5 years, would I buy it? You just put yes or no, and a 5-word explanation.
By doing this, you're logging your revealed preference in real time, and you're completely ignoring those fleeting daily emotions. You're looking for the ultimate signal, because a life you actually want is one where you stop needing a vacation from your own week. If you spend your 90-day test just constantly counting down the hours until the weekend, well, your answer has arrived early, hasn't it?
Finally, step 4, the closing script. At day 90, you make the implicit explicit. You say it out loud, often to the people who are invested in your status. You tell them you tried the real daily version, not the fantasy. You specify the exact elements you discovered you actually value, and you name the costs and the noise you simply do not want. You end by saying you're keeping what's yours and returning the rest. Listen, you aren't renouncing ambition here. You are simply returning expectations that were never yours to carry in the first place.
Section 5, where the protocol breaks. And this brilliantly illustrates that no framework is absolutely bulletproof. We have to be completely realistic about the limits here. First off, there are undoable decisions. You can't just sample parenting for 90 days, right? You can't sample a massive, unhedged career bed that requires absolute multi-year immersion. For those, you just have to accept real uncertainty and make a principled leap like an adult. Second, there's the perpetual sampler trap. If you run this audit on every minor impulse you have, you just become a professional dabbler. You'll endlessly sample options without ever staying in one place long enough to build anything meaningful. So remember, this protocol is reserved strictly for your top 2 or 3 loudest lingering ambitions, not as some creative excuse to just avoid commitment.
Ultimately, the goal here isn't to kill your ambition. It's to ensure your ambition is securely anchored in the present tense. Most people live as if right now is just some bothersome stepping stone to a hypothetical future. As the Dalai Lama pointed out in this profoundly true paradox, we sacrifice our health to make money, and then we turn around and sacrifice our money to restore our health. We get so incredibly anxious about the future that we don't enjoy the present, ultimately living as if we're never going to die, and then dying having never really lived. You have to drop the illusion that your life is happening anywhere other than right now.
Contentment and ambition are absolutely not opposing forces. You can rigorously protect your quiet, undistracted hours and still build incredibly impressive work over a decade. If the life you're building feels sustainable and clear on the inside, my friend, you have already won the game, even if it looks entirely unimpressive from the outside. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, incredibly important question to chew on. What's the one ambition you've spent years defending that you've never actually tried? And what would it cost you to find out you don't really want it? Take some time with that one. Thanks for learning with me today.